This is the White Coat Investor Podcast, Milestones to Millionaire, celebrating stories of success along the journey to financial freedom.
This is Milestones to Millionaire Podcast number 186, Emergency Docs Get Back to Broke. Resolve is the number one rated physician contract team, reviewing 1,000 plus physician contracts every year. They empower physicians with location-specific compensation data, which leads to unparalleled leverage during the physician contract negotiation process. A physician contract lawyer is included and can negotiate on your behalf, alleviating the stress that can go along with reviewing complex legal terms. Flat rate pricing and flexible schedules are designed for a physician's schedule. Use code WHITECOAT10 for 10% off at whitecoatinvestor.com/resolve. All right, we've got an event for the few, the financially empowered women. Christine Benz is coming on. She's going to be on September 11th, 5:30 p.m. She's going to be talking about Investing 101, and this is a treat. Christine is the head of the Bogleheads board. She is like the head guru of personal finance at Morningstar. She's been in this space for a long time. She knows what she's talking about. She gives great presentations. This is really a treat to have her on one of these events for the few. So sign up for that, whitecoatinvestor.com/few, that's F-E-W, financially empowered women, and join the community. And you'll get that event as well as other events. It's totally free. And these events have been wonderful. They're well attended, and we get great feedback on them. But I think this may be the very best one yet. So don't miss it. All right. We got a great interview today. Stick around afterward. We're going to talk for a little bit about paying off mortgages and a few reasons why maybe the more well-to-do you are, the less beneficial it may be to drag that mortgage out, and the better off you might be paying it off. So stick around afterward. Our guests today on the Milestones podcast are Ellen and Tom. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Tell us what you guys do for a living and how far you are out of training and what part of the country you live in.
So I am still in my clinical fellowship. I'm an emergency medicine fellow in Sacramento. And so just started the fellowship. So I'll be done with training in about a year.
Okay. Very cool.
And your fellowship's in health policy.
Mm-hmm.
I finished training last year, so I'm 1 year out, and we're in Sacramento, California. I work in two different sites. One a little bit more rural up in Auburn, and another in Roseville, which is a little bit more higher resourced.
Very cool. So one of you a year out, one of you still in training. It's not San Francisco, but Sacramento's not a cheap place to live either.
Yeah,
it's true. Northern California is kind of the whole of Northern California to move in that direction.
Yeah. Good pricing.
Yeah. So how did you feel about your tax bill the first time you paid as an attending? Did you like that?
Oh, such a delight. There's Christmas and then there's getting your taxes. I don't know which one's better,
So we actually, putting aside 30% at least from his paycheck every month has been a huge, that was a very strange realization. But it's what needs to be done.
Very cool. Well, you guys recently hit what I consider my favorite net worth milestone. You just got back to broke. So congratulations to both of you on that. Let's talk about your net worth. Tell us about your debts and your assets and how it all stacks up.
Okay, so our approximate net worth as of today is $30,000. Our liabilities include about $350,000 in student loans, so $150,000 for me, and then about $200,000 for Tom. He ended up going to a private medical school, so it was a little bit more pricey. We also have $120,000 in a 0% down payment loan from Tom's parents because we actually we're planning on staying in the area, and we ended up buying a duplex when we first got married, and we weren't anticipating the 20% down payment that required from a multifamily home. We had the 10%, but then when it required the 20%, it was a little bit off-putting. So they are very generous. It was a huge blessing that they were able to do that for us. And so we're still paying that down. And then we have $470,000 in our primary residence mortgage. For our assets, we have around $108,000 in high yield checking and savings accounts, plus a little bit of cash, about $150,000 in retirement savings at Fidelity and Schwab, and that about $40,000 of that is in Roth IRAs. And then the house worth is around upwards of $700,000 right now per recent appraisal. And then we have about $30,000 in scattered in like the worth of our cars, some silver that Tom got from his grandfather growing up, and then some I-bonds as well.
Very cool. So a hodgepodge of assets, a hodgepodge of debts. It sounds like pretty typical physician story, right? Doctors they tend to start their journey and with significant debt, but high income, and hopefully are able to rapidly start getting rid of debt and building assets. And it sounds like you guys are in the middle of this. A very real physician story we're hearing here. So, what made you decide you want to? I mean, here you are on the Milestones podcast, right? At some point, the two of you have made a decision that finances are important to you, that you want to be financially successful. Tell me about that conversation, when you had it, and what it was like.
I think, our first conversation about finances was like on our second
date,
we
some
would
stand-up paddleboards.
Yeah, we would stand up paddleboarding, and we were like, "What do you think about finances?" And so,
let's get real for a second.
Yeah, we had that conversation early on. We both grew up in really thrifty households, and we knew that not having a lot of material things around, but being able to facilitate spontaneity in our lives and not spending our whole lives at the hospital was really important for us. That's why we both chose emergency medicine as a specialty in the first place, one of the many reasons. And so that's been, so it's been kind of a natural progression since then. I'm definitely a lot more interested in finances than Thomas is.
I have to confess, I might only be here so we can talk about ice hockey for a little bit.
Yeah, so
all right.
That's why he joined. But it's been a good mix. Like he is fine to go along with whatever I kind of want to do, and I have I'm excited to work out different plans. I'm not a diehard hobbyist, but I definitely like to do a good amount of it DIY. It's been a fun journey.
Very cool. Well, it sounds like you promised Tom we could talk about hockey. So, Tom, are you playing on an adult league team or what?
Yeah, played last night. We're in the playoffs, so we've got the championship game in a couple of weeks we're hoping to make, and then it's just such a good community. It's really fun. I'm excited to see what goes on in Salt Lake City for you guys. If it's going to be the Yetis or the Blizzards, whatever you guys decide to name your team. But
we're pretty excited to have hockey here, except they stole the ice time from my league to practice. So one of my leagues is actually shutting down because they lost their race.
Oh, no.
They're not going to
there are side effects of bringing an NHL team to your city, but that's okay. I'm playing on 3 different teams right now, so I still
that's the goal. So nice. Yeah, Ellen was gracious and said I could put 2 nights towards hockey in this next season. So I'm happy. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, here's the tough part, though. As an emergency doc, as you know, more people come to the emergency department in the evenings than any other time of day. And so just by its nature, you tend to work more evenings. So how has that limited your ability to do things like playing on teams, coaching, going to, kids' activities? These are all the things that docs get limited on when they're emergency docs. They don't work that many hours, but the ones they work tend to be in the evenings. So how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think sometimes joyfully, sometimes painfully, depending on what night of the week. We have a 1-year-old and another on the way. So that has complicated our lives a little bit more. Before, my group is fantastic regarding schedule requests. So whether it was a weekend night or a weekday night, usually I could get 1 or 2 nights off a week that I'm requesting either for date night or for hockey. And so that's actually worked out well. You just can't have, I think, too high of expectations, like you're saying. You kind of have to expect the swing shifts frequently. But we did get an au pair when about 6 months into our first kid, and that has changed things significantly. I think just having flexible childcare actually opened things up. The constraints of the ER job we were kind of used to, but it's still better than residency. I think that's kind of what I've had to remind myself of. I still get more requests off from residency, and I'm slowly starting to adapt to realize this is probably the rest of my career. And so I've actually started to think a little bit more about either a fellowship or transition in family practice. Just depends if I decide that evenings and having someone with more stable schedule is important for our family. So it's a challenge. It's always kind of a conversation.
Very cool. Now, Ellen, you guys are in California, right? California is a tough place for doctors to do well financially, right? it's easy to tell when I talk to somebody from, Indiana or wherever, Oklahoma. They've got low cost of living, relatively low taxes. Sometimes they get paid more than the average because they're in, a medium size or small town or whatever. You guys have decided to stay in California where the tax bill is a little high, where cost of living are definitely high. Sometimes pay's not awesome there for doctors, just depends. Tell us about that decision and what sacrifices you feel like you've had to make to do that, and how you've managed to live both where you want to live and still be financially successful.
Yeah. Um, I think that for us, geographic arbitrage just wasn't an option because both of our families are in California and we love our families and we want to spend a lot of time with them. Our communities are here, so it just wouldn't make any sense to live anywhere else. Um, I think that it's also it's also wonderful to keep in perspective like how we grew up, and the amount of money that we're making now is just bonkers compared to the amount of money that either of our parents made growing up combined. And so even as residents, when we were pulling in, either both of us were making about 70,000 each. We were making more than like either of my parents had ever made combined growing up. And so that, like, to keep that in perspective and say, okay, we are incredibly blessed to have these huge shovels already during residency. Yes, we have a large amount of debt, but there are plans for us to figure out how to make that work. And so it was never really a big source of anxiety because yeah, we just have these huge shovels, and like the magnitude of the shovels compared to our parents, it's just, yeah, keeping that in perspective has been huge.
Yeah, very cool. Now, you mentioned your house was about $700,000. Now, a $700,000 house in Sacramento is not a mansion. How many square feet is your house?
It's 2,000. So on the bottom where we live is 1,000 square foot home. So it's 2 bed, 1 bath. So we'll see. I don't know how many kids we're going to have, but I think that will probably be the limiting factor in how long we can stay. But we're planning to stay for at least 7 years. And then we have the 2 bed, 1 bath on top as well that we rent out. Well, right now we have the au pair living there, but then one of the rooms we rent out to a local researcher.
Yeah. Okay. So now your net worth is just a little more than positive now. What was the nadir? What's the lowest your net worth ever was?
The nadir was right when we graduated from med school. So it was negative $350,000 when we came
Negative
out.
$350,000. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us how you've been so successful, right? I mean, you've gone from minus $350,000 to now a positive net worth, and only one of you is even out of training yet. So tell us your secrets to success.
Um, I think one of the big things is having hobbies that really don't cost that much money. Is an important thing. So starting out with that, we like to go whitewater rafting and backpacking, and we like to play hockey, which the dues are a little bit more expensive now, but they're nothing like, I don't know, getting into really fancy cars or getting into really fancy restaurants. So I think having cheaper hobbies and then also really valuing time with family and friends instead of going on really luxurious vacations. We usually end up driving down to Santa Barbara, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world, and visiting our brother and sister-in-law and aunts and uncles. We'll go up to Redding to visit our family as well. I occasionally have to Colorado to visit his sister-in-law. So there are local things that we're doing, and really valuing that time with family and friends, I think, has been huge.
Yeah, yeah. And then another, standard tip that is important is just making a budget that you both agree with, think is reasonable, and sticking to it. For us, we had a lot of conversations early on in our marriage about, where we can be more flexible or less flexible in the budget, and just being really honest about that and saying this, our grocery bill actually isn't, it's not reasonable for both of us to eat on $200 a month. Let's increase it. It's still not reasonable to eat on $300. So just having that conversation fluently about all of your budget, and then that's been helpful. And then having the same values, we both know that. I'm not worried about Helen going and splurging at Nordstrom, a $1,000 dress or something. She's not that kind of woman, and I love her for it. But yeah, having the same mind regarding what your values are and what's worth money and what's not worth money.
Yeah. And I think going forward, two of the things that I think have really set up well are not only meeting with somebody from a student loan repayment advisor. So we met with Andrew, and we figured out that we saved about $50,000 by consolidating my LDS. So the loans for disadvantaged students, we consolidated those with federal loans, and put me in a different IDR program. And it's going to save us $50,000 in the long term. It's definitely nice to have him on board, and also we're with Aptus Financial, and so having both of those folks on board just as sounding boards, and then also places to ask questions when weird times come about, like right now when state is on hold. It's good to have those experts and a little bit of a board of directors to go and ask questions to.
Yeah, it's nice to get a little bit of help. And the beautiful thing about it is it's not all or none, right? You don't have to turn everything over to an advisor or do it all yourself. There is a middle pathway there, which is pretty cool. You guys have discovered. So, Tom, what did she say when she found out hockey sticks cost $300 and they break awfully easy?
It's a great question. Some things you just don't talk about. No. So the way we've decided to balance kind of the more expensive hobbies and still give some financial freedom is we created a monthly fund, and it's a no questions asked. You can spend whatever you want, but you can't go over. And so I think right now, and that's again with flexible conversation, you can front load your fund up to 3 or 4 months in advance. So I do get to pay for my hockey dues, and if I break a stick, and hopefully it's not 2 sticks in 1 month. Yeah. And Facebook Marketplace is a great place to find some old cheap sticks, and you got to learn to play with what you got sometimes. So yeah.
What I discovered recently is they can repair those carbon fiber sticks. There are places that repair them now for $75-$80. You can get your stick repaired. So
worth it.
It's my new frugal thing. So I got a couple of them repaired recently.
Nice.
All right. Well, very cool. You guys have done awesome. You should be very proud of yourself. Thank you so much for being willing to come on the podcast and telling your story to inspire others that they can work together with their spouse to be financially successful. They can get back to broke, even if they live in California. And we just know you guys can continue down this pathway and continue to have more and more successes, and look forward to hearing about other milestones you'll hit in the future.
Thanks very much. We appreciate being hosted on the show. It's a joy.
All right. That's always great. I love doing back to broke milestones because it's the first milestone, right? Really, in the pathway of a physician's financial life. They've still got student loans, right? They're just in the middle of where do we put our money? We got all these great uses for money. We're not sure where to put it. They've got struggles, young kids, high cost of living area, still figuring out jobs, doing fellowships. But still taking the time to do finances right and become financially successful, right? It's interesting. We see people that are 5 years out and 10 years out and 15, 20 years out and that are super successful. What did they look like when they were a year out or when they were about to come out of training? This is what they look like, right? Because they're paying attention to finances. They're making sure they're saving. They've checked the financial boxes. This is what it looks like in the beginning, right? And then a few years later, all of a sudden, they're on here talking about having $5 million. You can do this just like they're doing. No, it's not easy in the beginning. There are lots of difficult decisions to make and some sacrifices to make, but it is almost always worth it when you front load taking care of the finances in your life. And you can still play hockey, right? And go rafting and do all that kind of fun stuff at the same time. That's the important part. Okay, I told you we were going to talk about mortgages. And, most people understand the math behind a mortgage, right? You figure out your after-tax interest rate and you look at the risk-free rate in the market, what you can go get in a CD or in a high yield savings account or a money market fund, and you go, well, if I can earn more elsewhere, maybe I shouldn't pay off the mortgage and I should carry it out. That's the way the math works, right? If you can make 5.3% in the Vanguard money market fund and you're paying 2.5% on your mortgage, you can make a mathematical case for dragging out your mortgage, at least for a while. Most mortgages coming out today are 6 and 7%. So you can only make 5% in the money market fund. It doesn't necessarily make as much sense to drag out your mortgage right now if you've just gotten one. But if you picked one up during those low interest years, you can make a mathematical case there. But there's a few things I want you to think about, particularly if you're relatively well-to-do. Some reasons why you might want to consider paying off your mortgage early. The first one is that if you're wealthy, you're probably maxing out your retirement accounts. So you are now comparing investing in a taxable account to paying off the mortgage, right? I mean, if you can max out another 401k or Roth IRA or something, well, that's often a better use of your money than paying off a mortgage. But now you're investing in a taxable account, right? There's going to be tax drag on that, particularly if you're investing in lower risk stuff. It may not come out ahead of what your mortgage is, and you might be better off just paying off that mortgage. Another thing that higher earners have to deal with is higher tax rates, right? We mentioned this on the podcast, right? They're putting 30% of their money toward taxes, and that's probably what they're actually paying on a two-physician income in California. They're probably paying 30% of their income in taxes. And every additional dollar they make is probably 50%. That's just the way the progressive tax brackets work. But the higher your tax rates, the lower the actual after-tax yield is going to be on your taxable investments. And so that makes it more likely that paying off your mortgage is going to be the right move in comparison. Okay, another thing that the wealthy deal with is that there's a lower marginal utility for extra wealth. Now, this is an economic term, right? Utility is like the benefit from having more money. When you're very poor, a little more money makes your life a lot better. When you're pretty wealthy, a little extra money doesn't make your life dramatically better. And the more you have, the less marginal utility of investing at 5% and paying debt at 3% is going to give you. It just doesn't move the needle after a while. And so you're more likely to simplify your life, pay off your mortgage, etc. All right. Another reason why it can be beneficial to pay off that mortgage early is it's kind of a little bit of a luxury good, right? I haven't had a mortgage since 2017. So what's that? 7-8 years now. I never have to make a mortgage payment. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about the bank coming after my home. My house is paid off. I get to brag to you that I have a paid off house, right? It's a luxury in some ways, but in a lot of ways, it's the ultimate luxury good. It's the ultimate status symbol, paid off mortgage. No, I don't drive a Tesla. I did rent a McLaren, but I don't drive a Tesla. I don't drive a sports car regularly. But I got something that's maybe in some ways a little more of a status symbol. I don't have a mortgage. Okay, another thing that debt gives you inflation protection, right? If you have fixed rate debt, especially at a low rate, right? Let's say you got a mortgage at 3% and inflation goes to 9%, like it did a couple of years ago. Well, you're now paying back that debt with deflated dollars. That's some protection. But you know what? The opposite happens too. If there is deflation, right, you start earning less, your money's worth less, etc., or your money becomes worth more. Well, you still owe the same nominal amount on your mortgage, right? And so paying off that mortgage actually gives you some deflation protection. You lose the inflation protection of having the mortgage, but you get deflation protection. Now, while deflation is not as common as inflation, it's not like there's no value there. And finally, one reason why it can make sense to pay off your mortgage is if you are paying advisory fees to a financial advisor, right? If you're paying an asset under management fee, they're generally not including the value of your home, right? And so if you had, $500,000 in a taxable account that they're managing, you're paying them 1% a year, that's $5,000 you're paying them for that money. Whereas if you took that $500,000 and put it toward your mortgage, it comes out of the assets under their management. You're no longer paying fees on it. You just saved $5,000 in fees. And that makes it so the break-even calculation's a little bit different. Now, obviously, you got to run the numbers. You got to see what your goals are. You got to decide how much leverage risk is worth taking. You got to decide what your goals are, when, if ever, you want to be mortgage debt-free. But keep in mind that there are lots of great reasons to pay off your mortgage, even if it's possible to earn more than your mortgage rate on your investments. All right, our sponsor for this episode is Resolve, the #1 rated physician contract team, reviewing 1,000 plus physician contracts every year. They empower physicians with location-specific compensation data, which leads to unparalleled leverage during the physician contract negotiation process. A physician contract lawyer is included and can negotiate on your behalf, alleviating the stress that can go along with reviewing complex legal terms. Flat rate pricing and flexible schedules are designed for a physician schedule. Use code WHITECOAT10 for 10% off at whitecoatinvestor.com/resolve. All right, we've come to the end of another great Milestones to Millionaire episode. I hope you enjoy listening to these as much as we enjoy making them. We are here to serve you. We want to know what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Send emails to editor@whitecoatinvestor.com, and we will make changes. If people are like, oh, we don't like this, well, we get rid of it. The show you're listening to now is the way it is because of feedback we've received over the years. So we appreciate those of you who have given us that feedback, as well as those of you who have volunteered to be on this podcast. You can sign up at whitecoatinvestor.com/milestones. All right, we'll see you next time. Keep your head up, shoulders back. You've got this.
The hosts of The White Coat Investor are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.